So Little Priest was, at this time, this is one of the mysteries that, I don't know, I guess being a person that was kind of taken over by Kipling's stories and so forth like this. This sounds something like it. Little Priest was, had sort of some nephews in his contingent, and he probably took 3 of these guys with him, and he found himself surrounded. He didn't fear being surrounded, but he feared that something might happen to his boys there, so they started to battle. And those days they fought Indian style, and that meant that this Indian sportsmanship was going to enter into the battle. They could have easily done away with him by everybody putting an arrow in the bow there and take a shot at him, and they could have filled him up. He'd have looked like a porcupine. But the sportsmanship of warfare, the Indian style, was that he's going to be fenced in, and anyone who wanted to challenge him would enter the arena and do battle with him, whether it was for keeps or for just to see if he could equal him or outdo him in the tactics of fighting. So this is what was happening, and somebody took a pot shot at him, I guess, and so this turned into a bloody mess, and this is where a Little Priest went back. There happened to be a cave there, and he went into this cave, bleeding, being shot with a rifle, and out of this cave came a grizzly bear, which acted in a somewhat human fashion. It went out there and it grabbed one of the enemy leaders, and seemingly grabbed a knife and cut his head off, and took a spear and set the head on a spear and poked it into the ground, and the enemy that were there, they were frightened, and of course the bear was taken after them, and so they all fled. So after disposing of the enemy, chasing them away, why the bear returns into the cave, and Little Priest comes out. That's all. What? And his song was that he walked bravely on account of his black grizzly bear totem. That was a song that he had composed for himself. And this is why he did a lot of things, because he believed that the totem that blessed him, which was a black grizzly bear, would help him in all his endeavors. And so that's where the grizzly bear enters into the picture, and later on at another battle, he was really perforated, where I guess you'd say that, with bullets and arrows, and he had lost a lot of blood, and they took him back to camp. I don't know how they did it. We used to have a sort of a skin that had this picture writing in it, and in there they wheeled him home in a wheelbarrow. I mean, back to the camp. There was a wheelbarrow there somewhere, I guess. And so there was a drawing there. I remember that a man pushing a wheelbarrow with a a limp form in the wheelbarrow. And so that was part of the picture, writing about the story of that battle. The doctor saw, the other members said, the doctor of the company, troop doctor, said, this man will not live throughout the night. And so they retired, and the wounded man called his grandsons or his nephews and said, make me a pile of fresh earth out quite a ways. I don't want to be close here. And so they went out and made a mound of fresh virgin earth, which they mounded it in a big pile. And then he requested them to take him out there and to keep away from there until he called them. So they took him out to this mound in the nighttime. It was dark. And he told them to leave him there and wait. He said he's going to try something and wait until he called. No, don't come out. Even see what's happened. He said, just wait till I call you. So it happened that it sounded like there were growls of some fierce animal out there. And they wondered if they'd done right by leaving him out there. And, well, he said to wait until he called. So after the sounds of growling and groaning and so forth ended, they heard the leader call back and either hollered back, say, Chunske, which is nephew or grandson, or maybe he might have even called the man by name. So the boys went out to, the ones that took him out there, went out to see what happened, and there he sat up on this mound which was scattered all over. The fresh earth that they had mounded up, the ground was really tore up out there, and he said, well, help me back. So they brought him back to the camp, and he said, I'm hungry, I want to eat something. And they noticed that the wounded portions where he was shot were all healed up. There was already scab formed over on them, and except the bullet holes which probably lodged inside. He couldn't get them out somehow or another, whatever he did. Some say there were 2 shots that he couldn't extract out of 5 rifle balls that he was shot with. Some say there was 1, but anyhow, that led to his death in the fall after they got back. So if they were mustered out or mustered in for 12 months, which would be May, so they served 14 months, so there's May, there's June and July, so they must have come home about August. And the man lived that August and died later on in September 1866. He was a pretty tough character, so I can repeat it several times. I believe that. But what powers he had to heal himself, cough out some rifle balls that was lodged in his body, I claim that it is really a mystery how he got the know-how to do these things. If it wasn't something super. So the doctor came to see if the patient had died during the night, and there sat the man chatting and laughing and eating breakfast with his men. And the captain was notified that this fellow didn't pass on during the night. So they come back to see him, and the soldier said, "Who are you?" "Oh," he said, "I'm just one of your helpers." "No," he said, "that I don't mean that." He said, "Who are you? I want to know." "Well, again, who I am, I'm one of your helpers." But he was trying to get him to say he was something supernatural or something like that, I guess. So at that time he was given a flag, and he was told that someday that you can set up your own 4th of July if you want it and celebrate this day because you have fulfilled in good style, good faith, with your good soldiers. You have brought good service to this country, and so you have this flag, and you can raise that flag up and declare your own day of 4th of July or whatever you want to call it. You are free. Up to this time, the Winnebagos had never pledged allegiance to the United States, and so after they came back, why, he was going to have some kind of a celebration and probably talk about this flag. But in the meantime, he passed on. So a year later, the brother of Chief Little Priest, his name was Chief Gray Wolf, at the annual commemorating program that they had set up, was they put this flag up on a pole, and so the place out here is known to the old people of this community, the Flagpole Hill. And for many years, this is where they had their annual homecoming celebration in memory of Little Priest, which today has developed into a thing called a powwow. And I think that Webster has it that a powwow is a noisy political gathering, but this is to meetings that they have now is to commemorate the deeds of Little Priest, which are fast becoming forgotten. Little Priest is very once in a great while mentioned, but in the history of the Winnebagos, I think he was the most famous of all the leaders, because what makes him famous is that he was a human being, and he felt that human beings should live in peace, and these are the things that he probably sacrificed his life for. So, in closing now, this is what I would say, maybe some of the stories of Little Priest, which we will gather and maybe later on talk about, might sound like fairy tales, things, but this man actually lived not too long ago. But some of the things that he represented, his life, he was trying to demonstrate to his people are being forgotten. And I think all peoples could use some of the examples of Little Priest's philosophy of life and gain something from it. So we are going to continue trying to gather from the old timers, and they're going fast too. Some of the stories that we have here, I'd say is 50% gone already. And so we will continue to work towards finding out more about Little Priest. I was asked to say something about myself in relationship to the Little Priest character, or the person of Little Priest. I had two great-grandfathers, something like Abraham Lincoln said, our forefathers, but that is more confusing than I can explain this part. That my grandmother had married Joseph White, whose father was Asa White. My great-grandfather on the White side, he was a soldier of Little Priest. But oddly enough, that being the case, my grandmother somehow must have had a fuss with grandfather, so she went home to Mama, I guess for keeps, and later on she married the son of Little Priest. His name was Louis Priest, the youngest son of Little Priest. Then I happened to come along there somehow, and being a #1 grandson to grandmother, and grandmothers really like their grandsons and love them almost to the point of spoiling them. But since she was married into the Little Priest family, things began to take a different turn. The family, I imagine, thought in this manner, that now Little Priest we have to honor because he is our leader. And from here on, all the young fry that come along will have to be trained in the principles of Little Priest. And his philosophy should be carried on. And so this is where I happened to come along and began to be tutored somewhat in the manner in respect to this philosophy of life, to such an extent that sometimes I wanted to play and be free of all this discipline and do my own games. Like if we play hide and go seek, I can hide any place I want to that couldn't be found. If we played follow the leader, I could do those things which I knew the other boys couldn't do. But at the same time, it was a little bit risky and they would be hurt. And so in this manner, I was impinged from doing as I wanted to. A little bit of kind of an extrovert, and I wanted to kind of show the guys that I could do things they couldn't do. Made it very difficult for me because we had visitors come to the place, and we had other boys and girls there. We were going to play some games, and well, I have to report to grandmother and say, we're going to go play, because children were not supposed to be around where the elders are talking. They might be talking about some subject that was your childish mind wasn't able to cope with or something. And so they'd tell you, go play somewhere. Don't be around here where the elders are talking. So this is what happened many times, and so the grandma would say, what are you going to play? Well, it's hide and go seek, or go down and throw staves. It's something like, they call it sakoro. These dead horse weeds, they grow pretty long and they're sort of a shaft. And if you throw them and slide them along the ground and see who can throw one the furthest. But when we come to the subject of follow the leader, that's when I used to get put down and by saying, don't you be the leader. And you watch the leader so that he will not do certain things that the others might get hurt. You watch him. And this used to get to me so much that I used to wish I was born over in that family over there. They can do anything they want to. But the discipline driving towards being watchful of your people was started way back there, even in the games of follow the leader. So under this kind of tutelage, you might say that I grew up to be the kind of person I am. My name from the Wolf clan name is Manwarujo Minaka, which can be shortened saying Morujo Minaka, which also means the same as the other, only it's said in a shorter word. It means he who dwells in a land that cannot be compared with. Or in other words, all these fancy interpretations of this thing, one said the dweller of paradise. Well, it comes pretty close, but I think that's a little bit too much. I'm living here. Paradise refers to the land beyond this life. I haven't got there yet. And so, if you ask me again to interpret it, I would say, Mr. USA to you. That's the closest I can come to it. The greatest land in all the world, and we say, we live here, and that's what that word means, Mo Rujo Minaka. So now, that's the way I am related somewhat to Little Priest by marriage. There are other people that are related to him in the same manner, because in this day and age, some famous person comes along, oh, I know him. And so this is where my relationship to Little Priest, I explain it as by marriage. I was his great-great-grandson, or whatever he didn't choose to call me at that time. This bonnet that I have on, this fan that I have, this is from an eagle. The feathers on this bonnet are imitation eagle feathers. But the eagle feather was very important to the Indian in the past. Well, maybe now too, even people are trying to go back to their cultural, traditional things. Eagle feather represents some merit, something that, well, like Olympic athletes, they get the gold medal, they all go for a gold medal. So one of these feathers was a mark of achievement in the past. And so many of them had endeavored to earn many honors. And so when they have collected or earned many honors, 30 at least, then they would probably make a bonnet out of it. It was not a chief who wore the bonnet. In today's movies, you see the Indians chasing the cowboys or the covered wagons, and you see the person riding out in a horse sitting up on top of the hill. He's the chief, so he's got a big bonnet on. That's movie stuff. A chief in battle looked just like any other Indian. You could not pick him out unless you knew him personally. Each feather is prepared in a way. You take the shaft, and it is bound with rawhide, a loop at the bottom, and either bound with sinew round and round so that that loop at the end could be attached to a thong going through the cap part. Years ago, they made the inside, the bonnet part, the cap main structure was out of deer skin or something perforated to keep the air flowing through there so you wouldn't get too hot. So this cap, or a hat, top of a hat that I used, I had to put a piece in there so that light part was a buckskin to make it a little bit bigger. These are tied on to the bottom here and decorated with separate feathers. This happens to be the blue part you see here is wound with yarn. And to dress it up, they put tassels up here. Some have horsehair, dyed horsehair of different colors and put on here. And this, just to make a beautiful hat. And highly decorated with beads, a beaded band and some on the sides. Maybe they attach ribbons on here like this one is. Some use ermine tails, and some just have other feathers down here. Something like this little one here. Now this one here is the wing of an eagle. And it's a fan. And sometimes these are used in other rituals in place of some other things. If they didn't have them, they used these in the other rituals. And these eagle feathers are much respected, and it used to be taught that you didn't lay it on the ground because they came from the bird who flies high. And out of respect for that bird, we never lay eagle feathers on the ground. Now the difference here, these are that's eagle feather. These are imitation eagle feathers. And the reason for that is that the bird eagle is protected. And it's against the law to shoot, kill, or try to destroy this bird. They were probably almost all killed off. And for a while there, an American Indian was the only one who could take an eagle. But in ancient times, too, the respect for the bird was so great, but they had to have eagle feathers to count coup. Being an honorable man, you had many good deeds, and you had these things. You were like a Boy Scout with his merit badges. He passed this thing, and you got a merit badge. So a man with many feathers on it and made a bonnet, he was an Eagle Scout or so, equivalent. And also, they had a staff, the Winnebagos did, they had a staff with eagle feathers tied to it in a decorative way, and that was the flag of the tribe. The Winnebagos had 12 clans, and so each feather on that flag represented a clan. I'm told that. We have nowadays kind of forgotten things. We just string up a bunch of feathers and so forth. And that, if you observe Winnebago carrying a staff, the Winnebago flag with 20 or so feathers in there, you know that that is not a traditional thing. It is a sort of an imitation, uninformed person, and so forth, according to our ancient cultures. So there is a saying among the Winnebagos, which very few of them use nowadays, to tell a youngster, remember, before the flag there was a feather. It was a great thing to go after eagle feathers. Just like the Boy Scout, he wants merit badges on his sash, you know. This is like unto that scouting. So I'm not going to lay this fan down. This is an eagle feather, so I am going to hand it to someone off stage. There isn't an eagle feather in here, except maybe these might be dyed eagle feathers, and we don't know. We get them from some poultry house nowadays. It might be turkey feathers and owl feathers or whatnot, but they do for a pinch. I made this in 2 days. They said I had to have a war bonnet for some reason or another, and so in 2 days, with a few hours sleep while we continuously were busy binding feathers and getting the beadwork done and put together. So we had a war bonnet, and it was beautiful, except now that the dye, goose feathers or whatever they are, the dye is fading out, so now we have a new type of bonnet. Enough for the war bonnet. They call it war bonnet. I don't know why they call it a war bonnet, because in a chief is always depicted or is one who has a bonnet on, and he is a man of peace, which we'll take the peace pipe next. Now, before I tell you about the pipe, I'm taking you way back to the beginning of time when the earth, the world was new, so the story goes. When Earthmaker Mauna had created the earth, all the animals, all the plants, and that which walks on 2 legs, he gave all creatures their duties. And every day, since that time, up to now, all animals do what they're supposed to do. Their life patterns were set. All the insects do what they're supposed to do. In the beginning, Mauna made it so that this is what they do, and they do it yet from that day to this day. Except that which walks on 2 legs. As he gazed down on his creation, he said, I had given all these chores to all the other creatures. This that walks on 2 legs is the lowest among my creation. They have nothing to do, but I gave them a mind. And so he called all these spirits together, or it might have been other creatures, space creatures or whatnot. his helpers, and he explained to them that he was giving to the two-leg walkers the plant, the herb we called tobacco. And so tobacco in the Indian life was very important, because when they would think about their station or status and realize that they are nothing without his help, they would take this plant and use it as a sacrifice, incense, and so forth, to get help. This plant was used in that fashion. Today we would call it some religious act and prayer by offering tobacco. Mauna, the creator of earth and all that in there that is, explained to all the spirits that they could not take this plant, and it was the burning of which was very pleasing to all of them, and they all wanted that. And he explained that if they would accept the offering of tobacco, that they must answer the prayer of the one who was sacrificing this plant or portion of it to get some help from these different spirits. So this is the manner in which Mauna spoke to his helpers. And it is said that from that day to this day, the spirits still want the tobacco, but they can't take it away from those that walk on two legs. And Mauna himself would not break his word because he gave it to him. He himself, being all-powerful, all-knowing, still remembers this, and he does not take it away from them. And so tobacco played a very important part in the life of those that walk on two legs. And it came down to pass that he also set aside a certain area, the only area that we know, where a pipe, we call it a peace pipe. This is a peace pipe, a ceremonial pipe. And where this stone is mined is Pipestone, Minnesota. They have mines there which they go down, dig in the earth, and dig out this stone. Because of its redness somewhat, there's different versions of why it was red. It represented the blood which we must have in order to live. This pipe is a ceremonial pipe. I can't quite stand here and light my own pipe like we do today. So, and it's also made in this shape because it takes two people to smoke this pipe. And they use this where people have to talk about something very serious, because they're using this tobacco, the sacred plant, which we use to pray. We pray to our super being, while we in the past used to put some in a fire so that the smoke will go up and, so to speak, carry the prayer to him. Or we might pray to our uncles who are out in the west, the Thunders, and we pour out tobacco to them. And I think my uncles today have been very lenient, stretching the rules a little bit, and so we don't have rain so that we might talk about these things. Now this pipe I did not make. It was given to me by one Sioux. If I make mention of his name, he has several names, and he may also have more aliases than I know. His name is John Fire, English name. His Sioux name, Chief Lame Deer. Lately, he is known as the Seeker of Visions. So, in taking this pipe, it was given to me out of appreciation for a little gift that I made to that community of a drum. And so I told him, the next time you see the pipe, you will not know it, or you will not recognize it. So it happened to be dropped and broken in 3 places, so I repaired it, and wanting to hide the breaks, the repair job, I thought it was a good thing to do because the Winnebagos used to decorate their pipes and so forth with lead. So what I did, I scarfed out the designs in here to hide some of the joints and placed lead in there. And that is a lost art, you might say, except for what little I know about it, but I guess I've done a fairly good job on it, and it makes a nice pipe. The stem part is made from hickory, a hickory tree, second growth hickory tree, and there were no knots in it, so instead of making a bow out of it, I made a pipe stem. I didn't intend to put the snakes on it. Those are eastern rattlesnakes. Incidentally, I am not a full-blood Winnebago. I am half Oneida of the Iroquois people. So my mother's country, we have the eastern rattlesnakes, and so this is what I burnt on this stem, which is objected to by some of the Sioux elders. So in the future, we will have another stem on this thing here, more suitable to their liking. This is a little drum. I imagine they could use this for moccasin games or hand games inside the house, just something to beat on. But I think it is made chiefly to sell to the tourists. It's made with a probably a hickory piece of wood flattened out and bent in the shape, circular shape, and stretched deer skin over the edges and sewn up, and you have a drum. But the important part of a drum is in this little ditty or story I'll tell you. As I used to hear it, the drum represented the voice of the Great Spirit. I don't like to use Great Spirit either, because that might not be exactly Indian talk. We would say, again, the Creator. That was his voice. And the teaching that goes with this here is that if you are going to celebrate or have a good gathering somewhere, if you dance, which all Indians like to do, and some non-Indians do, There is another thing. The spiritual side of the drum, what it represents, is the voice of the Creator. Some call him the Great Spirit. If you can keep in time with the voice of the Great Spirit or the Creator, which this drum represents, then you will be graceful in your dance. Suppose this, in the thought this was in your life, if you walk in the way of the Creator and so forth, you will be a very happy person. Someone, I used to go to Sunday school and said, he who is, his mind is stayed on thee, blessed is he whose mind is stayed on thee and thy ways and so forth. So this is what the drum would really mean to me if I thought of it in the religious aspect. It represents the voice of the Creator. And we have different kinds of drums. Now this is just a small hand drum. We have some water drums, which the Medicine Lodge uses. We have some smaller water drums, which the peyote people use. And those water drums, in the Medicine Lodge, there are quite, I'd say they're about 4-gallon barrels or 5-gallon barrels, which are used, lately they are used in the Medicine Lodge. And after 4 or 5 nights of beating on this drum, it used to rain like the devil when the performance was going to be given on the last day. So it has something to do with, I guess, bringing rain. Now next, I have a little deal here, which I suppose Winnebagos made them years ago. This was made by a Sioux. There's another little thing to carry around when you dance so that people that see you with this thing, it says, ah, there is an Indian. I have here one of the yarn belts woven by hand. There is no machinery yet that can do this kind of weaving. This is a belt, which if it was long enough, I think I'd have somebody roll it around and I could say, ole, like the bullfighter type. But this was handmade by my sister. Just recently, I brought it back from Wisconsin. Now, we are trying to encourage people who know this type of weaving to teach others, because the art is dying out. Now, this is made out of yarn, but the word for, Winnebago word for this type of belt is chehimpidak. Chehimpidak, this whole thing is called chehimpidak. Literal translation, cow hair belt. But the cow that they talked about was the buffalo. Be he a cow or a bull. It didn't make any difference. They got the hair when, I suppose, in the spring of the year, just before the buffalo shed their winter type of hair, long, and they would scrape this and save it and make yarn out of it. So most of their colors was not as vivid as this one here. They had somewhat a brown, and they dyed some of it green, And I wonder what it'd look like if you tried to dye it red. Well, their belts were very dark, not as brilliant as this modern day belt. So Chehimpidak, even the hair of the buffalo was used. And the hide for soles of moccasins maybe, and also for the large portion of teepees, wigwam covering, and etc. So I think maybe that brought this belt deal here to, we could end that discussion on the belt. There's a lot to talk about in the weaving and so forth, which I'm not a weaver, so I would not want to explain anything about weaving. I have here a mat made from plant life that grows around ponds, lakes, and so forth. Either the cattail or some similar water plant. And it's a mat, and it's woven, and this is for a floor covering, either in the wigwam and so forth. The other type of water plant reeds that were put together were somewhat strung with a bone needle, and that type was used for the covering of the wigwams, which was a summer home. It was shed water because of the long reeds going down, and when they got wet, they somewhat swole up and shut off the holes, and so the water just traveled on the outside. This happens to be maybe 100 plus years old. So I don't want to unwrap it, it might fall to pieces. Now this instrument, I guess, is one of the musical instruments of the American Indian. It is made from the wood of the red cedar. It is hollowed out, and somehow there's a story connected with the flute, which might be interesting to you who would want to make flutes. If you were not gifted in the musical art, or with a sharp ear for music, and you begin to try to make a flute that didn't have the right overtones so that it sounded like a flute, and you just kept on messing with it, eventually you thought about the overtone, the vibrations and so forth so much that you were not gifted or talented to put it into the flute itself. Then you would get that waves and vibrations in your brain, and they'd probably drive you insane. I mean, you wouldn't be all there. You have such terrific brain waves that people would say, well, something's wrong with him. Now, this flute has been in the Winnebago family, or the people here. It was given to me by an old one who, through Winnebago relationship, he called me uncle. And he thought I was a person to keep it. as a relic or some bring back to minds what they used to have years ago, and it was a fine flute. The master made this flute, and it was beautiful to hear one time, except someone borrowed it and split the thing to try to copy it. So later on in life, that person was a little bit not there. That is just a sample of what it would sound like. But being that it had been tampered with, and not being a flutist, of course, if I would fall in love, I would learn to play it real well and sit on top of one of these hills and play to my the apple of my eye. And it is said that if they get the vibration, then they will come. So we wouldn't have to make a date somewhere or a rendezvous place. All I had to do is sit up here and play to my apple of the eye, and she would somehow, in some manner, get there to answer my question. I'll say, "Are you there?" So this is the last artifact that I have brought with me to talk about. There are, you might say, 7-tune scale that the Indians use, not the 8. Maybe that's what causes the intended to give in, because there's a little sad note in there, a longing. They say that a good flutist can play this thing here, and she would not swoon, but get up and be there pretty soon.